sufficient in and of themselves, pointing out that new paradigms such as conditioned place preference offered additional information. Dr. Carbonaro pointed out that one of the strengths of conditioned place preference is that it looks at the entire reward system as opposed to a single receptor pharmacology, as may be the case in drug substitution. The implication of Dr. Jaster's work on treatment of opioid dependence then became a focal point for the SSDP attorney. He pointed out that in the lobby of DEA headquarters, there is a Faces of Fentanyl poster. I actually didn't see this poster myself, but I can imagine what it looked like. I imagine that these were not happy faces, the faces of fentanyl. I'm imagining that these were sad faces. This was an anti-fentanyl poster, most likely. And the SSDP attorney then asked Dr. Jaster whether she felt that the findings in her research had any bearing on the DEA's mission to prevent overdose deaths by opioids. The DEA attorney yelled, "Objection!" The objection was overruled. Dr. Jaster pointed out that increased drug craving is a hallmark of substance use disorder, and that any substance that reduces drug craving would be a potential avenue for treatment of substance use disorder, meaning the DEA's own stated mission of preventing abuse of substances could be hobbled by the prohibition of these anti-addictive 5-HT2A agonists. This is where things took a turn toward extremely interesting territory. The DEA attorney questioned Dr. Jaster and asked, "LSD is a drug with a high abuse liability, is it not?" Dr. Jaster responded, "I do not agree with that statement." At this point, I was having chills. There was something about that moment that made me realize something amazing was about to happen in the courtroom. There had been a lot of nonsense. There had been a lot of dancing over central issues. This was possibly the first moment where the essential divide between the DEA and SSDP was clearly delineated. Dr. Jaster is asked whether she agrees that LSD has a high potential for abuse. She says that she does not agree. The DEA continued to pressure her, making it sound as if she was ridiculous for saying that LSD and psilocybin do not have a high abuse liability. Dr. Jaster responded, "I think their abuse liability is minimal." The DEA's attorney then drops his nice guy facade and begins his attack. He asks, "Dr. Jaster, you don't believe that any drugs should be scheduled, do you?" Dr. Jaster responds, "No, I do not." The DEA's attorney responds, "You wrote on Twitter that no drugs should be criminalized," and pulls up a tweet where she stated something of that nature. Dr. Jaster stands by her statement and says, "Correct." The DEA's attorney says, "So from where you stand today, you think no drug should be scheduled?" Dr. Jaster responds, "That is correct." At this point, the DEA's judge looks at Dr. Jaster with what I interpret as a sort of admiration of her panache. I am in awe of this moment. The DEA's attorney says, "So you are here to oppose all drug scheduling?" Dr. Jaster clarifies, "No, I am here to oppose the scheduling of DOI and DOC." This was extremely badass. And Dr. Jaster has earned my eternal respect for her strength during this moment. I am so accustomed to people talking about speaking truth to power, and this is, people self-identifying as activists. And this was it. This was the moment. This was the test. Under pressure, in a room full of DEA agents, a young scientist with a lot to lose, standing by her principles and saying that she does not think psychedelics have a high abuse potential and that no drugs should be scheduled. It was so powerful for me that I was moved to tears. I don't know if other people were impacted that way, but that was the reality. I was just blown away by this moment. I don't know if the DEA judge had ever seen an expert witness say something like that before. I don't know. She could have done the typical drug elitist thing and said, well, I think psychedelics are different than terrible drugs like fentanyl or the opioids. She could have said, oh, well, it's different because I'm a scientist. But she just said the truth. She said that she thought no drugs should be scheduled. And it was so powerful. It was so powerful that I would like to believe that the DEA's judge recognized that there was truth in what she said. It gave me hope. It was damn impressive. So, and this is also precisely why when someone like Carl Hart criticizes drug users for remaining in the closet, this is why they remain in the closet, because there is a price to be paid for being honest about your beliefs. They had a binder that was hundreds of pages thick, full of probably every tweet she'd ever published related to this, looking for any opportunity they could find to humiliate and discredit her. And she stood by her beliefs, and I feel in my heart that the truth of her testimony rang through. I felt actual hope. It was a beautiful antipode to the political medical despair that has permeated my existence over the last months. This was a genuinely inspiring moment, and yeah, maybe it's hard to convey why this was so moving, but it was just a moment of truth after being waterboarded by bullshit for 20 hours, a moment of actual truth. The discussion then turned to whether or not the unscheduled status of DOI made her scientific research easier. She indicated that it was. There was an objection. It was made after she'd already responded, so the judge, whether or not he overruled it, was irrelevant. Dr. Jaster was finally asked whether she thinks psychedelics are safe. She said, generally speaking, yes. As if this were some kind of amazing gotcha, the DEA's attorney then asked her whether they can cause harm. She said, yes. He responded, well, how can something safe cause harm? She had actually said that generally speaking, they are safe. And obviously, generally speaking, safe things can easily cause harm. This is nonsense, right? I'm holding a pencil in my hand right now. Generally speaking, pencils are safe, but I could cause terrible harm to myself with this pencil in an almost infinite number of ways if I so desired. This is obvious, and this should only underscore the fact that the government's case is largely based on nonsense. Now, I am going to end this dispatch. There was a little bit more. Dr. Raul Ramos took the stand at the very end of the day, but the cross-examination had only begun, and I will save a description of that for tomorrow. This was truly an incredible day. This was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, and maybe I'm delusional, maybe I'm an optimist, but I would like to think that the DEA's own judge understood the truth of what was said in the courtroom today and understood that the prohibition and placement of DOC and DOI in Schedule 1 would in fact be a mistake. I would like to think that today represented a step in the right direction.